Well, I understand people. They have their own reasons for saying something. But when I hear that sentence, when someone says, I will not go to church because in the church I see some great sinner, some immoral person. I will not go to church when I see some communist who lived all the time of communism in a privileged position and who is now suddenly in the front rows. Well, when I see him, I won't go to church. Or I will not go to church when I see a tycoon who got rich overnight, who stole a lot, and how he flatters the church now, the friars, the priests. Well, when I see that, I just won't go to church. Or a man who swears and does all sorts of bad things is in the church every day, and that's why I just won't go. Somehow when I hear those people say that, I interpret it in my ears as follows. I will not go to church because I am better than them. I will not go to church because I am more pious than them. I will not go to church because I'm holier than them. Somehow it is a spiritual arrogance. Spiritual arrogance is so dangerous that reading the Gospel, perhaps this will sound harsh now, it may be a greater sin of one who does not go to church even though he lives by the law of God than one who has sinned greatly and yet went to church. Because when we look at Jesus, He forgave the prostitutes, the robbers, the tax collectors, and thieves, and so on. The only people Jesus condemned and said, "Woe to you," 8 times were the Pharisees. And that means spiritually arrogant people. Jesus gives us an interesting situation in the temple of how the Pharisee and the tax collector came. The Pharisee sat in the first row and he bragged, "Lord, I fast twice a week and I pay tithe on my whole income. Oh God, I thank you that I am not like this tax collector." And the tax collector down there, who is a real sinner, he says, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." And Jesus said that the latter went home justified, while the Pharisee, who lived according to the law, did not. And what is very important is that we understand that we should not judge man, and we should not judge what he has done. We should not look at his sin. We should not look at our sin, our own sin either, but we should look at Christ who forgives sins. When someone asks me that question, I also look for an authentic Catholic all my life. First, when I wake up in front of the mirror, and then when people come to me as a priest for some instruction and so on. But reading the Bible and the Gospel, we can somehow give a general answer, that an authentic Catholic and believer is one who speaks and does what Jesus Christ said and did. Take, for example, the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5, 6, and 7, which refer to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Through these 3 chapters, Matthew brought Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, which represent the core of the Gospel of the Gospel. When we read it, and if we truly live it, I think it is an authentic Catholicism to be an authentic Catholic. And if I were to summarize the Bible, the Old and New Testaments, or Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, I think it could be summarized, perhaps I'm exaggerating a little now, but I think it could be summed up in 2 words: to live love and truth. For love and truth are not concepts, it is a person, Jesus Christ Himself. Jesus says of Himself, "I am the truth, the way, and the life." And to separate that truth from love, for example, would be an abuse of truth. For example, if I speak very badly about a man who is not present, but who really did those wrong things, I'm telling the truth, and that's the real truth. However, I gossip about that man. Therefore, instead of helping him get out of it, I push him even deeper into the mud. I was telling the truth, but I abused it because I didn't use love. I spoke it without love. And that's not good then, because I abused it. We can also take the opposite for love. When we understand love based on feelings, like I like this and I do it because I like it, and we call it love. It is an abuse of love. For love in the sense of Jesus, in the gospel sense, is what I'm willing to die for. If it is about a man, about someone else, or anything else which I can love, which I call love, if I'm not willing to die for it, I mustn't call it love. Let's take an example. A few years ago, a gay pride was held in Zagreb. I remember a banner in front of the Zagreb Cathedral. It was carried by the people who participated in that parade, and that banner said, "Jesus said, love one another." It's really Jesus' sentence. That's what Jesus said in the Gospel. But they took that sentence out of the context of the Gospel and used it there. However, this does not correspond to the truth of the whole message of the Gospel. They separate it from life. So here I would briefly say, an authentic Catholic is one who lives love and truth as Jesus lived them. Catholics who condemn are not true believers, because Jesus said, "Do not judge." So although a man can be very sinful, just that brutal is sinful, I must not judge him because that is what Jesus told me. He said clearly to stop judging others or ourselves, for the judgment is reserved for Jesus alone. And Jesus said, "I did not come to condemn the world, but to save the world." Let Him save us. Let Him save us, and through us, let Him save other great sinners as well. Not that I judge them, point to them, and call them names, but let Jesus save them through me. Therefore, we are not called to judge or to save. The only thing Jesus asks of us is not to judge, not to save, not to point to people and so on. The only thing Jesus asks of us is to love as He loved, and to humbly serve as He humbly served. The best way to change someone is to stop changing him, but to start loving him, just the way that man is. And I'm convinced that love will change him because God is love. The problem is that when a man sins gravely, we are not able to distinguish a sinner from a sin. We should love the sinner and hate sin. So we should not judge the sinner or reject him and the like, but we should love him and hate sin. That means let's go together to overcome that sin, to love a sinner and to hate sin. The law is very important, both the state law and God's law. In fact, for me, as a priest, God's law comes first. The law is very important. Breaking the law in the state means going to jail, while breaking God's law means committing sin. However, if we do the law in details, that is, if we obey every letter of the law, Jesus asks for even more. Therefore, for us disciples of Christ, faithfulness to the law alone is not enough. For Christianity will become barren if it is only reduced to commandments, prohibitions, laws, and ordinances. The gospel is much more than that. For Paul, in his letter, says that love is the most important, and love cannot be condemned. It cannot be put into law. Love can only be spread, experienced, witnessed, accepted, and so on. Therefore, what I said at the beginning, the law is important because God gave that law. He gave the 10 commandments of God. Jesus says, "He who loves me will keep my commandments," and to break that law is truly a sin. Keep the law and the law will keep you. For one psalm says, "Blessed are those who walk in the law of the Lord, who keep His ordinances." Therefore, blessed are those who keep the laws of God, but love is more important. The law is important, but love is more important. St. Augustine says that love is a sign when the law and the law of God are to be broken. This means that we must never break the law of God. It is always a sin, except when love dictates otherwise. When love says we can do something, then it is not a sin. For example, I know it used to be a custom in Herzegovina. Today, unfortunately, this has almost been eradicated. Sunday is the day of the Lord, when hard work must not be done. For example, if men go to Holy Mass on Sunday, after Mass they go the rest of the day to dig the field of some poor widow who lives completely alone. And so they dig up the whole field. Although it was Sunday and they worked very hard, they did not sin. How's that possible? Well, Sunday is a non-working day. The law of the Lord says that one should rest on that day. That is the law, and they did not submit to that law because of a higher law, the law of love. What Jesus said hundreds of times in the Gospel, especially when it comes to the Sabbath, is that the Sabbath is important and that law should be kept, but that man is more important than the Sabbath, and love is more important than the law. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to witness to the gospel and my love for Jesus.